Hey guys, it's Ali. Welcome back to Infertile AF, the podcast. Big, huge episode today. This is episode 213 called Christina Perri. This podcast is sponsored by Receptiva DX. Receptiva DX is a powerful test that has helped thousands of women who have experienced recurrent pregnancy loss or IVF failure. The test helps detect inflammatory conditions of the uterus that might be preventing you from becoming pregnant or staying pregnant. The most common underlying condition of a positive Receptiva DX test is endometriosis with or without symptoms. If you or someone you know has struggled with IVF, Receptiva DX may give you the answer and treatment protocols that you're looking for. Talk with your doctor about Receptiva DX because the journey is so worth it. Plus, guys, Infertile AF listeners are getting $75 off the Receptiva DX test. So all you have to do is go to receptivadx.com or download the app Receptiva DX, use code INFERTILEAF23, and you'll get $75 off. Thanks, Receptiva DX. Today's episode is sponsored by MyVitro. At MyVitro, they know that receiving that big box of fertility medication can be overwhelming. They offer organizers and accessories to help make fertility treatment a little bit easier. MyVitro was founded by two infertility warriors, Danielle and Patrick, who want to help people like them who are struggling to organize their expensive IVF supplies. Since launching the company in 2020, MyVitro has helped thousands of people feel confident during treatment. From their fertility caddy and fridge box to the injection trainer and TTC bandages, customers rave that MyVitro products are a game changer. One happy customer even had this to say: "The fertility caddy is a perfect size to keep my medications, syringes, alcohol wipes, and any extra equipment I need. It keeps me organized, and that helps me stay sane on this wild journey." MyVitro, guys, has everything you need to get your meds stored safely and organized so you feel confident and in control of your IVF cycle. Go to myvitro.com, use code INFERTILEAF at checkout, and you'll receive 10% off your order. Again, that's myvitro.com, use code INFERTILEAF, and you'll get 10% off your order. Thanks, MyVitro. This episode is sponsored by Pink Stork. Pink Stork creates clean, natural supplements for women. Their diverse line of products, from gummies to teas to every supplement in between, offers something for every woman as they navigate their fertility, pregnancy, postpartum, and nursing journey. Pink Stork's fertility support provides essential vitamins and nutrients to support natural fertility and conception. Pink Stork's Total Prenatal is a comprehensive prenatal vitamin, complete with 100% of the recommended daily values for pregnancy, including DHA, folate, vitamin C, vitamin A, and iron. For Pink Stork, wellness is personal. As the wellness brand for women, they feel called to support all women on their wellness journeys. Founded by CEO Amy Suzanne after her own health struggles, Pink Stork is women-owned and women-run with over 80% female employees. Their team cares deeply about offering clean, natural products and the women who trust them every day. Wherever you are on your wellness journey and whatever your stage of life, you can trust their products knowing they're designed, tested, and loved by women like you. The best part? Infertile AF listeners get a special discount. All you have to do is go to pinkstork.com and use code INFERTILEAF15 for an exclusive discount on your purchase. Again, that's pinkstork.com, code INFERTILEAF15 for an exclusive discount. Thanks, Pink Stork. Before we get started, guys, make sure to check out Fertility Rally if you're going through a fertility journey and you need to find your people. We are your people. We've got so many different support groups. We've got all these different private Facebook groups. We have got one-on-one calls with me and my co-founder, Blair. We've got just this badass sisterhood and brotherhood now too, because we have Rally Guys. But we've got an Instagram at Fertility Rally. We've got a website full of content and resources and videos at fertilityrally.com. I can't urge you enough to join our Worst Club with the best members. We want to be there for you. It's the place I wish I had when I was going through it. So check us out. Okay, guys, I'm so excited about this episode with the brilliant, beautiful inside and out singer, Christina Perri, who you guys know from Jar of Hearts and her song 1,000 Years, which was hands down one of the biggest anthems of my infertility journey and so many others. It makes me cry every time I hear it. It's such a beautiful song. Her latest album is called A Lighter Shade of Blue, and it is just gorgeous. But today, Christina and I are going deep and getting real about her family building journey and why she wants to turn her tragedy into something beautiful. So Christina and I are going to talk about miscarriage. We're going to talk about stillbirth. We're going to talk about the lack of sex education that young women get. We're going to talk about mental health a lot and going to therapy and the things that she's been doing. We're going to talk about the effects of fertility issues on marriage. We're going to talk about mold poisoning, which has never come up before, and she has some really interesting things to say about that. And we're going to talk about how she is raising awareness for pregnant women with blood clotting disorders. So she's just an all-around badass. She is a woman's woman, a girl's girl. She's a cheerleader for all of you in this community, and I cannot thank her enough for going there like she never has before. This is an incredible conversation. Christina, I love you. Thank you for doing this. Without further ado, this is Christina's infertility story. Christina, I have to give a shout out to our mutual friend, Noah Shaw, who has been talking to me about you for a while and just how wonderful you are. And he's always like, I've got to put you guys in touch. So shout out to Noah for, making this connection basically. And he loves you. So I can't wait to talk to you and get to know you better.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Noah. Noah is like a brother to me.
I know. I feel the same way.
My big brother for a very long time. And he is a connector, is what I realized about Noah. He connects people. It is his gift.
Yeah.
And I feel like he has connected me, our whole friendship. So I'm grateful for another new connection.
Yeah. Cause you know why? Cause he listens and he's like, oh, that would be good to talk to so-and-so about. So he really does like take those
it's really
threads.
a gift, though. I feel like, because most of us don't listen.
Exactly. Everyone just wants to talk. Well, let's start at the very beginning, which is where I always start, which is, did you always want to be a mom?
That's a great question. I think I did. I come from a very large Italian family. My dad's from Italy. My mom's from America, but I have 5 siblings, and my dad is one of 9. He has 8 siblings. I have 50 first cousins on my dad's side. I mean, it's like, I kind of always thought it wasn't even an option not to be a mom, like I just grew up just surrounded by family my whole life. And I will say, though, there was probably a window from 17 to 27, where I was very selfish, like touring the world as a musician, like not at all thinking about, having a baby, and also definitely not dating a partner I would have wanted to have a baby with. I feel like that's important too. Like I was just dating the worst guys ever. So I was never inspired to make a family with them. But I will say around 27, I went to the OBGYN. This is so random. And she was giving me just an annual checkup. And I think she gave me an ultrasound on my ovaries or my uterus or something. And she goes, oh, your ovaries look perfect. And I just started to cry. And I was like, why am I crying? And she was like, oh, you're ready. And I was like, what? And it literally felt like a light switch. It felt like I had before I walked in there, I was a normal person. And then after I left there, I had baby fever. And I just from 27 to 30, when I got pregnant with my first daughter, all I wanted was a baby. Even my husband jokes around when we went on our first date that I brought up having a baby on the first day. And I was like, I don't think I did that, but I also wouldn't be shocked, because I was just like, let's go. I wanted a big, huge Italian family.
How did you and your husband meet?
So it's pretty cute. It's almost nauseatingly cute.
Literal meet cute story.
Yes. He interviewed me. He worked for iHeartRadio, and he was their face of their video department. So he was the guy that interviewed every artist and actor and anyone who went through that building for promo or press. Paul interviewed them. And what's funny is my whole career, I had never really fallen for anyone who was interviewing me. That just didn't even cross my mind. And then I walked into iHeartRadio December 12th, 2013. It was the end of the day. I'd been doing a 17-hour press day. I'd been up at 4 a.m. And he was my last interview of the day. So I was very sort of punch drunk, and silly. I guess I was really silly. Really, I was just delirious. I was like working
Totally exhausted.
Yeah. And so I remember like I walked in and he and I both just fell in love with each other on camera in front of everyone in the room.
How
like
cool.
I remember my manager even being like, I'm sorry, like, is this the first date? Like we were just like so cute. And like, I kept fixing my bangs and like, he forgot where he was. He was like, so your movie song, like he like was so thrown. He said that he's never been thrown off like in an interview. And same, honestly.
That's so cool. What was it about him
So
for you?
cute. Well, he was, I mean, physically, it was just very like handsome Italian guy in a suit. We were speaking Italian to each other. It was like instantly like, who is this cute man?
Oh my God.
And then just talking to him. And then for him too, he actually emailed his mom when I left the room and said, I just interviewed the girl I'm going to marry. And she gave it to me later. But I will tell you it because it's, you know, real life and not a movie. I didn't date Paul for 2 years. Like he asked me out for 2 years after that. And I didn't go on, we didn't have our first date until January of 2016. So
okay, why?
Well, I was on tour. So I literally met him day one of promo for my like campaign, basically. When you campaign an album, it's like a whole 1.5 to 2 year thing.
Okay.
And so I met him day one of promo, and then I toured the world between that day and then our first date. And so every time he asked me out, or every time I was in New York, or every time he was in LA, we weren't in the same place. So we built a friendship, I think, is what happened too. And he just kept saying, like, I kept giving him clues, even though I was like so clueless. Like I would like follow him on Facebook, like my secret Facebook. And then he was like, she loves me. And I, told him later, I'm like, you realize like Facebook suggests friends. And it's like, you were a suggestion, and he's like, no, I took it as a sign. I told my whole family, she loves me. She doesn't even know it.
Oh my God. So he's like pining for you for 2 years as you're touring the world.
And thankfully, because I just like missed the whole thing. I was so like busy and just like in my, I don't know, in my own stuff. And I feel like, so when we finally did go on our first date, we really had been talking for 2 years, but I was really ready to have a family. I was so excited. And then the truth is he was too. I mean, he comes from a giant Italian family. I met my person. I mean, he's got 5 siblings and his family's from Italy, and, it's just a good human, and he's from Jersey, and I'm from Philly. I have to clarify, because even though I lived in Jersey, like I can't abandon my Philly roots.
Totally.
But he, our families live in Jersey. And so it was really cute. It was like, it just made so much sense. And the truth is we fell in love and got pregnant before we even got married. So we were like, and truthfully, it was a, I don't want to say an accident, because it was like the best accident ever, but it was not planned.
Okay.
And I feel like, that sounds crazy because I wanted a baby so bad. So Paul's always like, are you sure? And I was like, no, I promise you, I just counted wrong. Like, my cycle or whatever. And it just magically, happened. And so I ended up getting pregnant in 2017, May of 2017. And then we got married at the end of 2017. So we were married 1 month before Carmella was born. She was born.
So tell me about finding out that you were pregnant with Carmella.
Oh my God, this story. Oh, okay. I don't know if I've ever told this story. I thought Carmella was a kidney stone.
Oh my God.
Because truthfully, I had never been pregnant before. And I always thought I was going to have difficulty getting pregnant, just because, when you're a young girl, and I mean, I was on birth control for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. And I feel like at some point I stopped taking it just because I started reading about health. I started to get very healthy. Like I remember being on tour, and I just started I didn't even go off it to get pregnant. I just went off it because I just didn't want to be on it anymore. I believe so I thought I was being careful, but anyway, I thought because I had not been pregnant at that point, because I thought getting pregnant was really easy. That's what we were taught when we were little.
That's what I was just going to ask you, Christina, because we talk about this so much on my podcast and just in our fertility rally groups. Sure. That's how I was brought up. It's so easy to get pregnant. Be careful. If you don't use protection, you're going to get pregnant. You'll get pregnant. Every single day you can get pregnant. I had no idea that there was a certain time that it was so difficult, that so many things have to come together, as you know. So
Yes.
I was going to ask you, what did you know growing up about your
Absolutely.
fertility?
Nothing. Like literally, I mean, I am a millennial. I'm a geriatric millennial. I'm 36. So I feel like I'm from the school of like once a week health class, Catholic school, learned absolutely nothing about anything, except that kissing and touching, you'll get pregnant. So
Okay.
I just was like, I was convinced, that I would have difficulty getting pregnant because I had never been, and all my friends had gotten pregnant or had scares to get pregnant or, whatever had growing up. So
Right.
anyway, but again, I truthfully at this time, I wasn't on birth control, but Paul and I were not being super safe. And so, we truthfully didn't know what was going on. I wasn't counting. I wasn't logging my ovulation. I was not in a season of like, trying to get pregnant and learning about it. I will say at this age, I'm 30 now, in the timeline, I did know a lot more. I mean, I definitely had like learned as I had gotten older, learned more about myself and about my cycle and like all those things just because of PMS and PMDD and depression and anxiety. And, like I had learned at that point, like what was going on with me.
Did you start to kind of advocate for yourself too, in terms of like asking doctors specific questions and doing your own research?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Hormones. Like I just started to like enter that world of understanding the woman, the female body. But anyway, so I ended up getting pregnant and didn't realize. And I had this pain in my back that was so bad. I took myself to the ER, convinced it was a kidney stone.
Oh my God.
And what's interesting now is that, it could have been really a dangerous pregnancy. I could have been an ectopic pregnancy, right? So I'm glad I went to the ER. But what I learned was that I was pregnant and that it wasn't a kidney stone. And so Paul and I were quite shocked.
Right.
Really trying. And what's even more unromantic, and I love sharing this because it's so true, is that Paul and I were fighting so bad. Like we were like in straight conflict, like just butting heads so bad. Now I know because I was pregnant and hormonal and I was like in this new version of my body. So I was like probably meaner than I've ever been. And, but he was like, it literally said to me when we were there, like, if you're not pregnant, I'm out of here,
Oh,
and
shit.
I was like, I'm pregnant. And then we stayed together. And it's like the funniest, most unromantic, like if that was a movie.
That's real talk though. I love it.
Oh, we were like at the end, he was like, I don't even know who you are.
Yeah.
And then of course, finding out I'm pregnant, it was like, oh my God, forgive you. You know what I mean? Like
oh my God. So this was 2017, you said?
Yeah, this is
and how
April.
How was the pregnancy and everything beyond that?
So I will say, oh man, I have so many thoughts. I feel like a first time pregnancy, is just so unique because at least now in hindsight, I can't even believe how much of like a little baby I was, like I have so many opinions about it now, but like at the time it really did rock my world. I was really sick. I was sick for, I want to say 19 weeks straight. It didn't really subside, around 12. It was like, I went all the way to about 19 or 20 weeks of being really nauseous, crying constantly about how nauseous I was, eating, crackers and watching Disney movies alone in my apartment in New York. Like I was like up in my tower, like Rapunzel. I was so dramatic. I was so like, I think about now, like, and how tired I thought I was, you know what I mean? Like, and I just was, just experiencing it all for the first time. But I will say, it was normal. I like now know because I've had so many not normal pregnancies since then that I was so lucky. I was one of the lucky ones, first of all, I got pregnant without trying, which is already very rare. Once I entered the world, I realized how incredibly rare that is.
Right.
And lucky and whatever it was, it was meant to be. And so I got pregnant without trying. And then I had no complications the entire pregnancy. Honestly, I went to every appointment. I had a great OBGYN in New York. I had no scaring. Like, it was like, I mean, I was just sick. I was learning about it. I was like, very, what I will say, I told everyone the first trimester I was sick, the second trimester I was sad. I had really bad depression, prenatal depression. And then the third trimester I was fat, is what I say, even though that's not very nice to myself. But I say, so what part of pregnancy is enjoyable? Like, I'm like waiting part, because some women are like glowing and love it. And I'm just
totally.
Like, yeah. So no, I really didn't like it, truthfully. And, I had a lot of problems. I remember in the middle of mentally, sorry, physically I was fine. But mentally I was sad, and I was, rocked. It just rocked my world. I was really emotional, really, struggling with my mental health the whole time. And also, it brought up every issue I ever had, honestly. Like, it brought up issues with my relationships. I ended up flying in the middle of my pregnancy, probably the middle of the second trimester. I flew to LA because I've been sober. Now I've been sober 11 years, but at the time I was sober about 5 years. And I had to do all the 12 steps again in the middle of my pregnancy, because I was losing my mind, I thought, and I was going to lose my partner. Paul and I were really in conflict a lot of that pregnancy. And to be fair, we weren't married. That happened pretty quick.
Yeah.
We were still learning each other. Now I think about it, we're babies. Know?
I think it's pregnancy can crack you wide open and like expose things that you're not even aware of that were an issue.
Trauma. Yeah. I couldn't be in the same room as my dad. I had to do my mom's. This is real deep. I had to do my mom's generational trauma. I had to do trauma therapy on my mom's trauma when she was pregnant with me, because I was pregnant and all of a sudden couldn't even look at or talk to my dad.
Wow. So what does that entail? I mean, that's a whole nother episode we could get into, I'm sure, but like just broad strokes, like, is that?
Well, I'll tell you, I never even knew what generational trauma was.
No, I don't really know either, I guess.
So, okay. Right. It's so wild, but this is how much I love this world of just psychology. So when this did crack me open, I will say I did the work. Like, I was like, I can't function like this. So my bar is very high as far as like, I'm always trying to keep myself balanced or okay. So I believe that when I got pregnant, I all of a sudden was experiencing what it felt like for my mom to be pregnant with me. So because the only reason I figured that out is because I was mad about things that weren't mine.
Oh, wow.
Meaning I was mad about what my parents went through when my mom was pregnant with me.
Oh, wow.
And so why would that be bothering me? Like, what, obviously, like, I have compassion and empathy for my mom and my dad, and they're still together and they worked through their stuff. But all of a sudden their stuff was bigger than my stuff. And I didn't even want to look at my dad. So I was like,
so interesting.
So I did what's called EMDR, trauma therapy, while I was pregnant. I remember it clear as day, picturing everyone as little kids.
Oh,
I remember
wow.
I went in my little, because in EMDR, you kind of go to like a little fantasy in your head, like you close your eyes and you hold these vibrating things. And so I remember that particular journey I did with my therapist was like, I was just imagining my mom, my dad, my brother, me, everyone is like tiny little kids. And then I would forgive everyone. It was really, really special. But
was it effective? I mean, I'm sure it takes time, right? It's not like instantaneous.
No. It's pretty quick. Honestly, once it gets, what I've learned about trauma is, trauma is basically when something happens to you and you have it filed in the wrong cabinet, and all you really need to do is take it. I mean, it sounds easy. It's not easy, but
I love that description, filed in the wrong cabinet. Oh my God.
Take that trauma, do whatever it is you need to do on it, and then put it in the right spot. And then it integrates into your life, and it doesn't hopefully control your life like it does when it's in the wrong spot, is what I've learned.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
But
wow.
Anyway, it's funny. I forgot about all this. I really did do a lot of work in that pregnancy.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it rocked me mentally.
Yeah. So how old is she now? What's the math on that? 5. Okay.
Yep. And she came and I mean, I don't know how much you want to know about like more about that pregnancy, but it was like I said, it was just normal. I'm grateful for it. It was um, I gave birth in New York City. Carmella always says she was born on the Upper East Side, where she got that. And I had like a normal birth experience. And now I also know, unfortunately, about terrible birth experiences.
Absolutely.
And so I know that Carmella's was just like as normal as they come.
Yeah.
And I made an epidural, and Paul was a great partner. And
Yeah.
I went in labor for 21 hours, and Carmella came out looking beautiful. I came out looking, I mean, I looked like I went through the birth canal. I looked like Rocky Balboa. My face was so swollen because I wore my contact lenses. It was a mistake I learned. And, but other than that, it was
my
fine,
God.
honestly.
That's great. Well, isn't it funny? Because so it sounds like you had secondary infertility, right? Like which we'll talk about, like,
Yes.
and so did I. So I have a daughter who's 13, and same kind of similar thing where we weren't not trying, but I did get pregnant with her, without any assisted reproductive technology and any of that. And pregnancy was fine. And looking back at that, it's almost like ignorance is bliss, right? Like I had no idea. So many people have those kind of pregnancies where it's just like, well, we got pregnant. Here it is. It was fine. Maybe a few bumps in the road, but like overall, and that's like the experience for so many people. But then there's this whole other category of people like us and, millions of others who have, losses or, some sort of issues, health issues that cause problems and all that stuff, which we'll talk about too. But I just think it's wild to think of like, had I known during my first pregnancy what was to come, I think it would have been so much harder. I was just like, I'm pregnant. This, it was so easy.
I had therapy yesterday, and my therapist said to me a really interesting phrase. She said, "When was the last time you felt like the coast was clear?"
Ooh,
that
just gave me the chills.
Right? Well, I'm sharing this because I just realized, so in my timeline, and what I'm sure we're going to get into talking about now, is I truly believe the last time, because it took me a while to come up with my answer for her. And I really think the last time I thought the coast was clear was when I was pregnant for the second time, which we can get into. And it was right before I miscarried. And it was New Year's Eve, and we were in Disney World, and it was beautiful. And I feel as though I was a person before, and then I miscarried that second pregnancy, and I've been a different person since. And I feel like, to what you're saying, yes, it was ignorance. It was beautiful. It was like, you have your before and your after. And I just feel like it changes you so much when you go through this life stuff, whether it's miscarriage, whether it's stillborn, whether it's NICU, all these things I've now learned.
Yes.
They've changed me each time. And like, I can never go back. It's like, AD and BC. Like, I just feel like it was time before, And I was like, I was just blissful in a way that was like, everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine. And then, it is what it is. And I deal with it every day, and I'm learning to make sense of it, or learning to make beautiful things from it, or taking it and just, trying to accept these things as like my new reality. But there really was a time when I was like, wow, everything's fine. Here I am, I'm pregnant again. Like exactly when I wanted to get pregnant. So I got pregnant in November of 2019. Carmella was a year and a half old. And this was like the dream I wanted.
Right. You're like, nailed it, timed it perfectly.
I will say Paul and I tried for 3 months, maybe, just naturally trying. And, I was trying to figure out, now this was also the first time I was like counting my ovulation and my days and my symptoms and my temperature. And I mean, I didn't get too like intricate with it. I just was like, okay, I think I'm ovulating this week. Let's try. And it took, I think 2 or 3 months to do it, but I did get pregnant naturally. And, I was so happy. I just thought, okay, this is going to be exactly like the last time. Like I just was so, didn't even fathom it could be different, and like, what's crazy too, is like, there has been major progression in women's health, and we all know so much more about miscarriage and about, statistics and about difficult, situations and challenges. And I have friends who had IVF and all these things, but like, you still don't think it's going to happen to you.
Never.
You're just like, oh yeah, I have so much love and compassion for you and your story. And then it's like, but like, I'm pregnant and everything's fine.
Totally. Right. Absolutely. And I think also, so I had 4 miscarriages between my daughter and my son. And it was the same. Well, for me, it was actually the first one. I was kind of like, I have a lot of friends who've had a miscarriage, and it was not that I wasn't sad and devastated, of course, but it was kind of like, this is kind of a part of the thing. It's part of the deal. It's pretty common to have one, but then like 2 and 3 and 4, I was like, wait, what the fuck? What's happening here? Like there's something wrong. So
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I had a very similar experience. I remember, so I was pregnant so I found out November 2019, and then I miscarried January 10th of 2020. And so right after that Disney World trip on New Year's Eve, we came home, and then I went in for my 10-week appointment at 11 weeks. We were a week late just from traveling. And so somewhere between 10 and 11 weeks, I miscarried. And I was escorted right to the hospital for a DNC, and it all happened very quickly. I mean, they asked if I wanted an autopsy, and I just said no, because I thought this is so common. Like, so all of a sudden that voice came in my head that was like, this happens to 1 in 4 women. I know women who have had miscarriages. It is really common. It's really unfortunate and awful, but it's not a sign that something's wrong. I kept trying to tell myself that, like,
100%.
Common. This is part of what baby making season life is. Like I was so similar in my like self-talk, like it's going to be okay. I remember even thinking we'll try again right away. Like nothing scared me about it, because I was like, oh, I'm sure it's just a genetic abnormality. I like almost leaned more on the science. I was like, oh, first trimester miscarriage, genetic abnormality, I'm going to move on. And I mean, obviously, again, I was also devastated and sad. And I ended up like getting a tattoo, writing a song about it, like, doing things to like, to actually honor my grief. Right. I really did grieve. Yeah. But at the same time, I was not really thrown off my game necessarily. I was like, no, I still want to continue growing our family. And Carmella was so little. She was only just turning 2. So and I wasn't even showing yet. I mean, I could see my little belly, but she couldn't. So like, I feel like she totally missed it. So I didn't even feel that guilt, because that guilt just kept getting worse and worse as we go on. But
absolutely. Can I ask you, how did the miscarriage like present itself? Were you bleeding, or was it you had the scan and there was no heartbeat, or how did you find out?
There was no heartbeat.
I'm so sorry. That's just the worst.
Thank you. Yeah, it was awful. I mean, I was, rocked by that as well. I was, excited, and, it was just blindsiding. I mean, we had no signs of anything that was wrong. Not that anybody really does. And then I will say this, I learned later that if you miscarry after a heartbeat, that there's some cause. So if you miscarry before a heartbeat, it just most likely didn't develop for reasons that are unknown or unprovable. But my OB said to me later, when I was doing other research and learning about things, that after there's a heartbeat, there's normally a reason why something went wrong. But for a first-time person miscarrying, for a very sensitive little mama who just went straight to the ER to get a DNC, I'm not asking these questions. You know what I mean? Of
course not. Right.
Like, yeah. So I didn't even investigate that miscarriage until a year later.
Right. So later on, the blood clotting disorder that you have,
all that
light.
Stuff. Yes.
Do you want to talk about that now, or what happened after the first miscarriage?
I'll wait and
okay,
because I'm in I don't want people also to think that like I was aware of that so fast. It really took me another miscarriage, or I should say, a stillborn to alert me that something was wrong. So because of how common miscarriage is, I didn't have all the red flags, right? I just had, I guess, a normal amount of red flags, which is something went wrong. It's not my fault. I healed from the DNC. I waited a little while. I'm not sure Paul and we didn't actually try specifically to get pregnant again because I wasn't sure I was ready. I had just taken birth control. This is really random, but I had a cyst grow on my ovary after that miscarriage. So when you get pregnant, every woman gets like this like cyst that grows that gives the progesterone, and then it eventually goes away around 13 weeks or so. And I guess I had grown that cyst that was giving progesterone to the baby. And then when I miscarried, my body didn't get the memo and it kept growing instead of going away. Right. And so I went to the ER in Nashville. I was actually in Nashville 6 weeks after my DNC, and I was doubled over in pain, and I had a 6-centimeter cyst on my ovary.
Oh God.
And they didn't have to operate, which is amazing because I'm glad I didn't lose that ovary, but I did take birth control to get it to come down. So there was like, this was again, and I've talked at length about sort of this story, and I realize now of the red flags, but there was no way at the time I was collecting these like, oh, this is odd. Oh, this is odd. Oh, this is odd. I was experiencing life in real time. I also had a 2-year-old. It was the pandemic. Now, right. It's 2020. It's the worst year of all time for everyone.
For everyone.
There was like no, like, really noticing all these things that started to happen. But I will say now that I see.
Right. So what were some of them?
So I couldn't lose the 10 pounds that I put on for that pregnancy. Now, that doesn't sound like a big deal, but for me, I knew it was. Like, I've been kind of tiny my whole life. And especially like if I'm working out, not eating carbs, like, doing certain things like drinking celery juice and all these things, like I normally just like lose weight. And people kept saying, oh, you're older now, and I'm just like,
something's off.
Something's off. So then all of a sudden I need thyroid medication. So after that miscarriage, because I had that cyst on my ovary, I wasn't losing any weight. And so my OBGYN suggested I take Synthroid for my thyroid, which could be why I'm not losing this weight. Right. So I'm like, well, that's weird. I never needed that my whole life, but okay, I guess I'm just getting older. Like, so I was like, sort of just moving forward in my life, also listening to all the doctors, because my intention was to get pregnant again. So I was just like, okay. Like I was just doing what I needed to do. And then I got pregnant. I found out Mother's Day of 2020. And interestingly enough, I really don't think I noticed that we had like tried. Like I know because it was, it was the pandemic. It's so funny. So many people did get pregnant in the pandemic,
Yeah. But I feel like that period of time was so weird. I mean, that's like the understatement of the world, but it was like time was passing by so slowly, but also in like a weird pace. Like it was fast at certain, like, I don't even know how to wrap my head around it. There's
we're
never
still
been another. Yeah, totally.
I feel like, what I'm saying, why I'm saying this is because I feel like Paul and I didn't like specifically choose to try because I was nervous. I just think we did the whole not trying thing and said, if it's meant to be, it'll be right. Like if it's supposed to happen, it'll happen. And I was nervous about sort of like trying really hard because I didn't know if my body was ready. But I said to Paul, now that I know how hard it is to get pregnant, if I get pregnant, we'll know it's supposed to be. We'll know that my body is healthy. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
I had no idea. So I will say this. I know your podcast is called Infertility AF. I do not have a problem getting pregnant. I've learned this 4 times. I have a problem staying pregnant. Right.
That's my problem as well.
Yeah. So I will say, so I don't want to make it sound like it was super easy for us. It did, happen. But at the same time, obviously what comes next is really awful. Like I didn't stay pregnant. So
totally. I mean, I think it all kind of falls under the umbrella of, what is infertility anyway? What does that mean? Not being able to have a successful, healthy pregnancy, for whatever reason. So there's kind of a big blanket,
and I also just don't want to be insensitive to women who have trouble getting pregnant. Right?
No, totally. And you're not.
We all have different versions of it. And
absolutely.
And I was very grateful for getting pregnant. And
completely.
I do know how hard it is. But so anyway, so I took it as a sign. When I got pregnant, it was Mother's Day. It was joyful. I remember Carmella, was 2 and some change. And she we told her. I think we told her when I was 12 weeks. Actually, I know we did. We were down the shore. We'd rented a house in in Ocean City during the lockdown because we were like, oh, let's be in lockdown down the shore.
Sure.
July. And so we had a little house that we rented, and our families came, and we told Carmella that I was pregnant. It was 12 weeks. We waited until after the appointment. There was a heartbeat. We did the whole like pregnant after loss, sensitive. So all of a sudden, like I will say, pregnancy would no longer be the same for me.
Right. Well, speaking of the coast not being clear, right? Did you ever feel like during that pregnancy that the coast was clear?
Yeah, which is why my answer yesterday, even, and this is now, it's been years, and I still remember the last time I thought the coast was clear was before my first miscarriage. So no, after that, I will say I forgot to mention one thing, by the way.
Sure.
The community of women who miscarried, I shared about it online, and thousands of women supported me through that. I forgot to mention that. I also think that really helped with how I got through it, because when then I got pregnant again, I felt strength from these women. I had so many people telling me in January of 2020, when I shared about losing that pregnancy at 11 weeks, so many women not only told me their stories, but they also said, they tried again and had a rainbow baby. So now all of a sudden I am in the community. I am in the infertility community. I'm in the miscarriage community. I am communicating all the time with women about this stuff. So I'm like, I've arrived into this club, right?
Right.
The terrible club. And
that's why Fertility Rally tagline is worst club, best members, because everyone's so wonderful and wants to help each other, but nobody wants to be here, of course.
Exactly. And we all just want to hold the people who enter the club.
Right.
So I got really held. I really was really loved through it.
Well, I think it's so awesome too that you are so public about it, having a platform and a voice and a lot of people who, are interested in what's going on with you. I think it's really cool that you've always wanted to help, change the story and blast the stigmas. And that's really cool. So thank you for doing that.
Of course. Well, again, I can't take credit. I also feel like the people that listen to my music and the platform I have are women that are growing up with me. Like we're all just now we're in.
I'm sure you've heard this a million times, but 1,000 Years was one of the anthems while I was going through miscarriage, miscarriage after miscarriage, and the amount of tears that I cried listening to that song. And I think it's kind of like, have you heard that before? That it's kind of like an anthem for so many women, and it's just such
a different life,
such a powerful.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for.
It's funny. Carmella asked me to sing that to her the other night before bed.
Oh.
And it's so funny because like I almost was like, okay. And like I'm singing to her, and the lyrics are so different than when I wrote them. I wrote them for Bella from Twilight.
Totally.
Here I am like singing them to my 5-year-old. She drifts off to sleep and and I felt like, I really hear the song differently now. So
totally. I'm like welling up right now talking about it. That's how powerful it is. I mean, it really resonates.
I feel, that song is a gift. And I also feel like, I didn't think twice about sharing about it. And I think that's how comfortable and safe I feel in the community online and in the world, the voice that I have and the lane that I'm in. I've always talked about my mental health. I've always talked about my sobriety. So I feel like talking about infertility was just made sense. And I also, I feel a very small, but feel a responsibility even to speak up for people who can't. And like things like, we did we did a announcement photo for the baby that I miscarried in January of 2020, where Mickey Mouse I was holding a onesie that said baby Mickey Mouse. And he was like, oh, and like Carmella was like, woo. And like, how many of us make these photo shoots and lose the child? Like,
I know.
Like, I was like, that's why I shared about it. That was like that was the initial, oh my God, I was about to post this photo in 5 days. Like, you know what I mean? I was going to be 12 weeks pregnant in 5 days from when I miscarried. And so here I am sharing a very different announcement. I was going to post that picture and joy. And instead of posting that I, miscarried and grief. And I was like, oh my goodness. Like, I just felt this like sense of, I'm not the only one, like I needed to share about it. So anyway, I continued, and that only got bigger and bigger, and I only shared more and more and more, because I felt so loved and supported from being vulnerable. Right. I feel like that's so interesting. The older I get, how I understand that vulnerability is strength, like it's like Brene Brown, that whole world, like, oh, wow, I get it.
Totally.
And it does connect us, and it does, help us, in our grief, and life is so freaking hard.
Yeah.
Like I keep thinking like, oh, surely there must be no more pain in my future. And it just was, and it was just more painful and painful and more painful. And like, even now, after I've been through what I think is the worst pain of my life, I know it's not true. I have to and I still have to exist in the planet and be like, hey, more pain may come my way. And I have to get my strength. And where is that strength, and what does it come from? And it comes from these experiences, and it comes from, this community. And anyway.
Yeah. So what happened next?
I found out Mother's Day I was pregnant. I hate to say this, but I had an incredibly normal pregnancy. So no issues, no complications. We told Carmella at 12 weeks. I felt so good. I mean, I was still nauseous. It was just like my pregnancy with Carmella, actually. I was nauseous like for 19 weeks exactly.
Okay. So were you ever able to exhale, or was it that anxiety of pregnancy after loss that's always like peeking over your shoulder, right? Like always like whispering in your ear, like, don't relax. Coast is not clear.
When we passed the 11-week mark, I remember that being hard. And then I remember saying to Paul, wow, I don't feel any better. Like every sonogram, I never felt better. Like I'd feel relief for a second, and then I'd worry about the next one. Yeah. So when PAL, like pregnancy after loss moms, no matter how big or small or whatever age your gestational age your baby was when you lost them, it does not matter. It's just, you are just, in my opinion, it's a different experience. It's not enjoyable. I tried to find joy, and the joy that I found was through Carmella's eyes. Yeah. So that's what makes what happened even harder, because we were like, including her in everything, because we were anxious, and we were, always with that fear of this not going well. And I will say, like, my program, being sober for a long time, like that surrender, that turning things over to a higher power, that sort of like, letting go, and like those practices helped me. And I do remember saying, like, I'm going to stay in today. Like certain things like would help me get through my anxiety. But it was there. It was never not there. I just had good days and bad days, I think.
Right. One of the mantras that we talk about a lot is like, for people that are in that circumstance, pregnancy after loss, it's like, I'm pregnant today, or like, I'm pregnant right now. And that's kind of all you can control, right? It's similar to what you said, I think.
And, I will say, I remember saying, like, I want to share about it, because if I lose the baby, everyone will help me get through it. And I still just didn't think we were going to lose the baby.
Yeah.
You say that, and you think you're still hopeful. You're holding on to this, like, well, it couldn't possibly happen again.
No. Right.
And I don't know where all your miscarriages were, but
all early for me, all first trimester for me.
Well, what a traumatic experience for you to get through that first trimester, like it's, for me, but even I'm saying I had the first trimester miscarriage, and I still never felt safe, and then I had a third trimester loss. And so even the whole time I just was like, I don't know, just believed, okay, I'm pregnant today, so maybe we'll go all the way.
Maybe.
And, yeah. And because I had never experienced late pregnancy loss,
right,
I did think we'd make it.
Yeah.
Truthfully, when I was 8.5 months pregnant, I thought we were going to go, and I thought it was okay at that point, but I was like protecting my heart, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
But I was definitely like pretty sure we were, I was not planning on dying.
So when did something happen that indicated that there was a problem?
Week 30.
Okay.
So It was November 10th of 2020, and I went in for my scan. Now, because I was on thyroid medication, because I had a miscarriage, I qualified for a high-risk pregnancy specialist in New York that I would go to more often than my OB. So like I would do regular scans at my OB, and then I was able to go to this periodontologist for extra scans, which who would ever say no to extra scans?
Right.
So I got to see her more often and make sure everything was okay. And so I went in for my 30-week scan. It might have been an anatomy scan, like maybe one that everybody gets. And I was told that day that her intestines, there was a block in her intestines. It was called atresia. And they immediately, by the way, I didn't know it was a she too. We didn't know the gender, but we went to the hospital and they admitted me right away. And I was like, I mean, that almost traumatized me, Paul and Carmella, more than when the baby passed, because we were just blindsided. Hey, there's a problem. You might have to give birth right now. You might keep the baby inside. You might be in the hospital for the next 6 weeks. We don't know. Like, it was sort of just like so scary. And we went from the doctor's appointment to the hospital and didn't go home for 2 days. So Carmella was beside herself. She had never and we didn't know how to handle that situation. I remember discussing with a couple online moms, Big Little Feelings gave me a script to tell Carmella, like Dina and Kristen, like they really helped me. Cause I was like, what do I tell Carmella? You know, I was like, really just, our family was sort of blown open again. And it was almost like I want to say like a little blessing that happened before what happened 10 days later, because we were already alerted something was wrong. Because if she had just died, I feel like that would have been, I don't know, maybe just too much for all of us to process. But because we were already like, something's not right, or, you know, mommy and daddy are going to the hospital every day until this happened. Like, we really were able to get a little bit of a communication about it.
Sure. Almost like you're able to kind of brace yourselves a little bit. I mean, you can never prepare, but how did Carmella take that when you told her, or when that was going on for those 2 days?
She was really affected. She was so mad at us. She was heartbroken that we had left and didn't come back, and everyone wasn't telling her the truth. Because I will tell you, at this, my 2-year-old was now almost 3, and she was like a 6-year-old. She had such a mental development year where there was no lying to this girl. There was she's a little empath. She's so smart and fully verbal, just like a person, like you know what I mean? Like, she was not a baby. And so we had, the baby's nursery was all finished. She knew she was going to be a big sister. She knew mommy had a big baby in her belly. I mean, she was like, what do you mean there's something wrong? What do you mean you're not home? What do you know, she was really, of course, kind of messed up from that. And I remember crying about it, because I was like, oh my gosh. And we had just transferred her to her own room. I mean, in a bed, from a crib to a bed. And we made a big sister room. And because I thought we still had 2 more months, you know, of like time to prep Carmella and like have her love her room. And like, you know, we made it a big deal. And then here we are, and like, we didn't come home for 2 days. My mom and Paul's mom is there, and it's just chaos. And I was like, oh, and that was really hard. I just remember that was really hard. But then, like I said, we were able to have a communication with Carmella that we said, if mommy and daddy don't come home, we're at the hospital and we're having the baby. Because then I needed to be monitored every day. So they did send me home from the hospital. And I had 4 doctors that told me what was going to happen. Like, I was monitored. This is also why I don't like regret things, and I can't go backwards and wish things were different, because I had the 4 best doctors in Manhattan, like literally the head of Lenox Hill Hospital's fetal department, that my OBGYN, periodontologist with her own practice, this fetal monitoring MRI specialist from Westchester came down. Literally, these are like the best of the best. And they all agreed So this is,
right.
I would say, like, it's not a bad thing to trust your doctors. I trusted my doctors, but all four of them. So all four of them weren't wrong,
Right.
and they all sent me home and said, come back every 2 days or every day, whenever, or if you want to or need to. But every 48 hours, and we're going to fetal monitor you. And right now you're fine. The baby's fine. And we want the baby to stay in there as long as possible. Cause I was 34 weeks or at this time I was only 33. So, or 32. So the baby stayed in for 10 more days. Okay. And then I was fetal monitored at 11 a.m. on November 23rd. And by 11 p.m. on November 23rd, she passed away. And I don't know exactly when. I just know I didn't feel her moving anymore. And we drove from Montclair. We were living in Montclair, New Jersey. I was just talking about this yesterday. We drove through the tunnel. Paul and I did not say a word. Mm-hmm. It was the most awful experience, that car ride. We drove from Jersey to the Upper East Side. We showed up at the hospital. My doctor was there waiting for me, which I knew was also a bad sign. Like she could tell by my voice on the phone that something was wrong, because I tried chocolate. I tried orange juice. I tried apple juice. I tried moving her. And it was just the worst nightmare. I'm not going to say that it wasn't. It was,
so sorry.
Thank you. They did like a Doppler to try to find her heartbeat, and they couldn't. And then they did a sonogram and they confirmed that she had passed away. And, I don't know how much you want me to get into it, but it was
as much as you want.
Well, it was a really awful, I guess, like 3 days. They asked me if I wanted a vaginal delivery or a C-section. I wanted a C-section. I wanted them to knock me out. I wanted to not know anything. And I'm really glad I did the opposite. My OBGYN said, she will do whatever I want, but I could go see Carmella sooner if I have a vaginal delivery. That's what got me.
Oh, wow.
I was like so worried about being away from her. And so I said, okay. And they induced me. I gave birth to her. We found out she was a girl. I'll tell you, we didn't know the gender with Carmella. We didn't know the gender on the, obviously the first miscarriage I had, but then with this baby, we didn't know the gender either. So when she came out and the doctor said, it's a girl and she's sleeping, I never want to not know the gender again like that. So when I just had, which, oh my gosh, what a happy place this story goes, because I have a beautiful 4-month-old baby girl right now. But when I was pregnant for the 4th time, I was like, Paul, we have to know the gender like that. That was the last time I did like a surprise, learning the sex of the baby, because I will say that sort of ruined it for us,
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when they said it's a girl and it was Carmella, it was like the most exciting,
joyful
thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So unbelievable to have the complete polar opposite experience,
Yeah.
And so we named her Rosie.
Yeah.
And we held her, we met her, we said goodbye to her. And Paul and I, we got through it together. We asked Dr. Becky Kennedy what to say to Carmella. So again, this online community helped me so much. She's like rock star mom. Also Janet Lansbury, who wrote No Bad Kids. Like, these showed up for me, and I asked them a million questions. And we went home. We told Carmella that was the hardest thing I've ever experienced. Do
you remember what you said? And you don't have to share it if it's too personal.
No, I will. No, of course. And yes, so Dr. Kennedy, she said to say the truth. And then we asked 2 social workers, 3 OBs, 2 nurses in the hospital. Everyone said, tell the truth, tell the truth. And I was like, oh my God, please don't make me tell the truth to my, almost 3-year-old. But we did. And we practiced the whole drive home. And it's so interesting too, like, so many women go through this experience and don't have a baby at home, and I want to say I'm really grateful that we had Carmella for many reasons, but it also was incredibly hard because we had Carmella for so many reasons.
Of course.
All the things. And, but she really saved us because we were in that moment more concerned with her.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I obviously worked through all the grief and the things with actually losing Rosie, but at that time I was like so focused on what to say to Carm and how to get through that as a family. And so we came home and our parents were there, and we had it all orchestrated where like Carm was in her room. We went straight to her room. We didn't want to see our moms because we'd fall apart. So we went and saw Carmella first. And we'd said this script basically that was really powerful. And at least what I learned about, how you talk to kids is like, you kind of tell them the bare minimum and let them ask questions, but you tell them the truth. And so I said, Carmella, mommy and daddy have something to tell you. And we were really strong. I'm not sure how we were so strong in this moment, but we kept it together for a bit. And I said, mommy and daddy are here, and you're here, and your body works and you're healthy. And mommy, my body works, I'm healthy. Daddy's body works and he's healthy. The baby came, her body didn't work and she died. And I just said that, and it just sort of sat in the air.
Oh my God.
And we weren't like breathing. And then Carmella, she like kept playing because, kids are just fascinating. And so she like was playing, she's like, and like playing. And then she like looks at us. I see her process it. And she goes, literally, she's not even 3, holds me and Paul with her arms and goes, don't worry, mom and dad, you'll have another baby and their body will work.
Oh God. Oh my God.
I swear, I will never forget that. And so we lost it. I mean, and
I'm losing it right now.
we cried. She held us, we held her. And then I said, like, Carmella, I said, thank you. Here she is comforting us. And I said, another important piece was, mommy and daddy are going to cry, and mom and papa are going to cry. We're all very sad. It's okay to cry. Grandma, grandpa are going to cry. You're going to see your Zia's cry. I wanted that to, because she was that's so
important to say that it's okay. You're going to be feeling a lot of different emotions.
Oh my God. Yeah. The next day was Thanksgiving. We had everybody over. It was like, it was just.
Yeah. I read this quote that you said somewhere else and about this time and of losing Rosie. And you said something to the effect of like, there were days where you couldn't see a future version of yourself. And I thought that was really powerful. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure.
Is that back to like the mental health kind of stuff and
trauma, right? Yeah. So what I learned is that when you are in something very traumatic, so I was that there's no comparison to any other moment in my life. That was the most traumatic experience of my life so far. And I feel like when I was in that, when you can't imagine yourself or your life in the future, that is the biggest sign that you have trauma work to do, I mean, and that sounds very clinical. Obviously you don't realize it in that way when it's happening. But I feel like for me, I didn't realize it was even the holidays. I couldn't think about Christmas. I mean, this was November 24th. So all of a sudden it was Christmas. All of a sudden it was January, and we moved to LA to get out of the cold, to seek refuge with sunshine and our friends in LA. And I had doctors in LA I wanted to talk to, and like life kept happening and I kept moving forward, but I couldn't see it or imagine it. And that was my grief, and that was my trauma. And then I did EMDR again. I like believe so much in this. And I will say the EMDR I did this time was for the exact moment I found out that Rosie had died, and I was staring at the ceiling, because you're supposed to take a moment where like almost like you break. And so for me, the break was when the nurse couldn't find the heartbeat with the Doppler, and then puts me on a sonogram machine. But the whole time I'm staring at the ceiling because I was not in my body. I was not there. I already knew there was no heartbeat, right? And intuitively. So I'm waiting, and Paul was parking the car. My OB had stepped out because she thought they found a heartbeat, and they didn't. It was my heartbeat that they found. So that's even worse. Yeah. So there I am laying there alone with this nurse who's, like really young girl, and she stops breathing. And I'm not even looking at her because I know what she just found. You know what I mean? Like this was the moment. And so I had to go back to that moment. And now I will say the person I do EMDR with is my therapist of 12 years. I love and trust her so much. And she's a trauma specialist. So she was sitting with me and holding these vibrating things. And we're going back to this moment when Rosie died. And my eyes are closed and I literally say to her, "Oh my God, you're here." She's like, "Wait, what? I'm there?" Like, this is my therapist, Bernie. I'm like, "You're here. You're standing in front of the door." And she's like, "What door?" And I was like, "I don't know. There's a door." And I can't open it. I can't open the door. Like, I remember I'm with goosebumps right now remembering this.
Wow.
And I asked her to help me open the door. And when I opened the door, I saw me and Paul in the hospital room and I'm in the bed and the woman's checking my belly. And it was that moment. And I found it. Like, so what that meant is I went back and found the moment I couldn't move forward past. That was the break for me. So when I saw it, and I was holding Bernie's hand in my EMDR session in my mind, because I was too afraid to open the door and believe that actually happened. I was in shock. And this was 12 weeks later. And I did the trauma session.
That's so cool.
From that moment on, right? And I was, oh God, I was like snotting. I was crying so hard. My face was soaked. You know, I was in it. It was so hard. It was so hard to do that and to accept it. Cause I just was like, "What do you mean I'm in shock? I know that she passed away." And my therapist was like, "No, you actually don't believe it," you know? And she was right. And so in that moment, I see it, I go through it again. I say it, I describe it. I see myself. I see Rosie died. I see that Paul was there for me. You know, I reprocess the whole thing. And then I could see a future for myself. Literally like that. I was like, I need to take what happened to Rosie. I need to make something beautiful from this. I need to find out what happened to her. I need to find out what's wrong with me. I need to advocate for other women. It was like
it all came spilling out, right? Like organically. 100%. Yeah.
And I didn't stop. I mean, the truth is, like, I don't know much, I literally, I went so passionately. And again, I will say this is what carried me through my grief too. So once I was able to move forward from the actual trauma, which I did that in January of 2021, I did not stop until December 6th of 2021. I was sitting in front of the woman from the ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and I sat and I presented her with a year's worth of research, discovery, stories, suggestions, and hopes. What I hoped for her, what I hoped for the ACOG, what I hoped for women, and how I could take what happened to me, which what happened is I then went back, because then I decided, okay, so Rosie died, the baby died in January of 2020. Now I want to know why. And now I'm going to ask all the questions. I'm going to, I had all these allies I had an OBGYN that was just like my friend, like who sat with me, and she was willing to answer my question and willing to tell me about, blood clotting tests and how come, like we don't test for them unless women have multiple miscarriages. Like, so I started to learn, basically, I opened up this whole box of everything I didn't know. And I was so inquisitive and into health at this point. I couldn't believe I didn't know these things. So I always said to Paul, like, if I don't know these things and I ask a million questions, like the normal woman in America does not know these things. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Like, too many kids to have time to even ask these questions, or works 24/7 to ask these questions. They don't know these things. Of
course. It's like a full-time job to advocate for yourself medically.
Yes. And I had the time and the resources at this time, because I took the time to do that. And I'm really grateful for it. And again, I had allies and people that were willing to talk to me. And I just started to gather information, and I found out that I had antibodies for something called antiphospholipid syndrome. But my OBGYN said to me, "They get mad at me when I do this, but I'm going to test you for this thing," which I'll never forget that quote, because I only had 2 losses, not 3. And now,
so who gets mad? Like, why?
And I just want to say, right, let me just take a second to say that I just summed up 2020 for me in one phrase that said, well, I only had 2 losses instead of 3. But did you hear how that just ruined my life for the whole year? Like, and my family and my child. Like, people don't realize that these losses, if they're avoidable, right? Of course, sometimes they're not. And I don't want to ever just assume that like people can try harder, or do better, or know more. You know, that's not the case for everybody. And I don't want to sound that way.
No.
My losses, what I learned is that they were avoidable had I been on a blood thinner.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to go through 2 losses that destroyed my life forever, you know, and who I was. And now, you know, obviously I'm putting the pieces back together now. Mm-hmm. But I had to do therapy. My husband had to do therapy. We had to do couples therapy. And my daughter had to do 3 types of therapy, for play therapy, art therapy, music therapy, based on 2. But they want me to have 1 more before I get the answer.
It's such bullshit. I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing. So the name of this blood clotting disorder is what?
Antiphospholipid syndrome is mine.
Okay, that's what you said before.
Now, I will say there's 7 types of disorders.
Okay.
So there's the factor 5. There's also this MDHFR. I'm messing this up. There's a gene, there's a mutation. There is a scale of blood antibodies that tell you whether your blood is sticky or not sticky. You can be on the low end or you can be on the high end. It's pretty complicated. You have to sort of look into it. I wish it was simpler. What I will say is the test is for everything. So it's like if you ask your doctor for a blood clotting test, right? That covers all of them.
Okay.
So your doctor should be able, and it's interesting how many people say to me, what's the test called? What's the test called? It's not, there's no name for the test. It's a test for blood clotting antibodies. Okay. It's for blood clots. What I find really disheartening is every OB knows what this test is. And so many women write to me and say, oh, my OB didn't know what I was talking about.
I saw that on your Instagram. Before this interview, I was going back through and reading some of your posts and some of the comments, and so many people had commented, validation. Thank you for validating what I've been fighting for and what I've been trying to get tested for. You know, it's unreal. I mean,
especially because it's not expensive. Like, I understand you would think it's money. That's the reason. But the truth is, it's 1 cc of blood. It's $42 if you just did that test. But if you get tested for this in your prenatal screening, that you're already getting like 10 different blood tests, you know, for your vitamin D level and your you know, all your body's levels, that, you know, your hormones and your thyroid levels and all these things that you're testing for already. If you just got this also, it isn't extra. It goes to the same lab. It's 1 extra file. It's like included. It would be included in the lab work, right? So I understand that my understanding is that it's harder to get the test, to get people to give you the test than it is to get tested, right? The test is just the blood, and then the proof is in the number. And then if you have antibodies, blood clotting antibodies in your blood thinner is the solution, which is also not expensive.
Right. So is that Lovenox for you?
It was Lovenox for the first 36 weeks. And then they switched me to heparin because it's a shorter shelf life in your body. Gotcha. Because I was getting closer to birth. But I want to say it was like $6. You know what I mean? Like, to get that, the Lovenox shots. Like, it really was not, we are not talking about MRIs and, you know, diabetes medicine. Like, this is basic care. This is 1 blood test and then blood test, which you could even take baby aspirin or just aspirin. If your levels are so low and the doctor says to you, well, it's up to you. That's what I want women's health to progress to. Make it up to me.
Sure.
Tell me everything. I want to choose. I want someone to say to me, hey, you know, here are all your levels for everything we test in the prenatal screening. You have some antibodies, maybe maybe a possibility for sticky blood. You can take blood thinner if you want to be safe. Of course, I'm going to do that.
Of course, you're going to do that to be given the option. You're exactly right. Yeah.
About education. It comes down to, you know, it comes down to systemic women's health. It comes down to a little bit of misogyny. It's all men that decide this. You know what I mean? Like, and I tried very hard to stay clear of any political, sort of, pointing the finger. I didn't do that. And it took a lot of guts because I, want to, in a way, be like, this is why this is wrong. But the truth is, let's just move forward. Let's just, it doesn't matter what happened. There's no changing the past anyway.
Right.
My whole point is, and my analogy that I used in all my meetings with everybody I've spoken to about this, and I'll continue to shout this, is some point, 26 weeks, they give every woman the gestational diabetes test. What happened where they went from, let's give just these women who have a history of it this test, and then, okay, now let's universally give it to every woman at 26 weeks. What was the catalyst for that? And so I find it fascinating. I met with the president of Mount Sinai Hospital, and she sat with me for 2 hours at La Pan on the Upper West Side and answered all my questions. And she said, oh, I was in charge of changing that. Like, cause she's like an older lady.
Get out.
And I was like, oh my God, I've been dying to know, like, what happened? And she said, obesity in America. And I was like, wow. She said, so in the 90s, obesity became a thing. And we decided all women should be tested for gestational diabetes based on the way that women are eating. Right now, I was like, interesting, because I have a whole theory, which, we didn't really get into. We should do a part 2. I feel like why I have the blood clotting antibodies, why I've developed the blood clotting disease, because obviously I didn't stop there. Once I found out about it, I was like, well, why?
Right.
And I found out that for me personally, and everyone is different, half of the blood clotting diseases you can be born with, they can be genetic. The other half you develop. I developed mine because I did not have this with Carmella. When I was living in New York City, and when I was, in my 20s and then 30, I did not have any of these problems. No thyroid issues. No, I later found out I have Sjogren's syndrome, which is another autoimmune disease that I developed. And then the blood clotting disease. And all of a sudden I have all these health issues that I never had before. And what I found out is that I had mold poisoning. So the house that I moved to in New Jersey, in Montclair.
Oh, wow.
100 years old. And we tested the house a week before I moved to LA. After Rosie died, a friend just suggested it. And I was like, well, that's weird. What does that even mean? I'd never heard of it my whole life.
Wow.
We even bought a house. Why would the house have mold? If we bought it, don't they do a mold test? Like, there were so many things in my mind. It's like, well, it's probably not this, but let me rule it out.
Yeah, of course.
My best friend was in LA and she was struggling with mold poisoning. And I was like, I've never even heard of that. So she said, just for my sanity, do this test. I said, okay. So they tested the house, moved to LA. 21 days later, I get my blood work back from the toxicity report and the house. And I had severe mold poisoning. And our house had 30 types of bacteria of mold in the house. It was invisible. It had black mold in the walls of the house. We were living in the most unhealthy environment.
Oh my God.
In the year of the lockdown, we didn't leave the house for 136 days.
Right.
While I was pregnant with Rosie.
Oh my God. Wow.
So my story gets deeper and deeper.
Yeah.
And deeper.
Absolutely.
Now, I have deduced this. There's no way of proving it, but I've spoken to all my doctors. Everybody agrees that mold, it looks like a hormone imbalance. It looks like a thyroid problem. It looks like infertility. It looks like, so people miss it all the time because it's that one next layer when you ask why. So a lot of people just say, oh, I have a thyroid issue, and they take thyroid medication. Oh, I had a miscarriage. Let me, take this blood thinner now, And so that would have been, I did find the solution, and I do have a healthy baby. And I did heal from that mold. I did a 1.5 year mold detox. I have to say that because I didn't only the blood thinner. I also cleaned out my whole system. But the solution for my blood clotting disease was simply just the blood thinner. So I have to stay, when I talk about this, it's very complex because I have to say in my lane when it comes to, no, I just want women to be tested for blood clots and I just want them to take blood thinners so they have babies that are alive. That is my MO. But I also want to say, I also had to figure out why that happened to me.
Right.
And then what I could do about it, because I was so sick and I didn't know. So
well, even by saying this and sharing this, you're helping so many people just to, not only advocate, but ask the questions and look into these other issues, because we always say, like, you don't know what you don't know. How do you know about mold poisoning? I mean, we've never talked about that on this show in over 220 episodes. You know what I mean? So it's never come up.
Wow. Okay. Well, let me tell you, like, I had no idea it was a thing. I had no clear symptoms of it. Some people think it's just respiratory. Nope. For me, it was fertility. That's what it attacked. I mean, literally, I've done so research now. In men, it attacks their GI system. My husband thought he had celiac, but he didn't.
Oh my God. This is so interesting.
He no longer has a gluten intolerance. So it is fascinating. And it is also heartbreaking, I want to say. And it's also expensive. This is why we don't know about it. It is so expensive to get tested for toxicity, like a full toxicity report. That is a special test. That is an expensive blood test. That is
what, like, ballpark is it? Like how much does it cost?
$400.
Okay. Yeah.
And so you can get your urine tested or your blood. Your blood's more accurate because your urine is basically just a snapshot of what you are eating and eliminating that day. But blood is sort of more what's going on all the time. And but both are better than nothing. And they give you, an idea of what's going on in your blood. And now I will say one more thing, because this is, it's such a big topic. And also a lot of people just shut down as soon as I say mold, and they just like, no, thank you. Like, I mean, honestly, I've never seen anything like it, because I'm not shouting from the rooftops as the mold police, because I just like, the truth is it's everywhere. So everyone is going to have mold in their system. What matters is your ability to fight it. I have to say this. So some people have a leak in their house, and it's unavoidable to be in a world full of it, right? It matters how your individual body fights it. For me, I was pregnant, so I was autoimmune compromised. I had viruses in my system that I didn't know about, like mono I had from when I was little, Epstein-Barr. I had this Sjogren syndrome. I had certain things that made my toxicity bucket full. So I want to say that too, because this is like how I understand it, that is really important. My husband fought the mold, even though he had like celiac and he had a couple GI issues. His body made antibodies against it and fought it like a normal, healthy person. I did not. Because I was pregnant, because I had these issues, my bucket, say everyone has a bucket where they can handle
can only have so much. Yeah.
Like literally we're exposed to stuff all day. We're exposed to toxins all day long. So our bodies are made to fight them. Our bodies are amazing. Right. But mine was full. My toxicity bucket was like bloop, full, overflowing. And so once I got exposed to mold, my body, I had every, unfortunate experience with it. And so that's why I lost these babies. That's the root of it. But it was the blood clots, that everyone can agree on. And I just believe that the mold was the catalyst for the, decline of my health in general. And then I moved out of that house. I never went back to that house.
Wow.
And I did a 1.5 years of detox, and I got pregnant. I got pregnant in April of 2022.
Oh my gosh.
I got put on blood thinner right away. I mean, I went that day to my hematologist, who I love this man in LA, and his wife had a blood clotting disease, and he gave her shots every day. And he said, you're going to have a healthy baby. I'm going to make sure you have a healthy baby. Like, so many people loved me through this.
Yes. So wait, quick question. I know that everybody's different, obviously, but you just had to have the blood thinner during the pregnancy, or is it every day, no matter what?
Just during the pregnancy.
Okay. Got it.
So from whatever day I found out I was pregnant, maybe, week 6 or in week 5, I took every day a shot of Lovenox, like I said, until week 36, and then I switched it to heparin. But I took it my whole entire pregnancy, and the whole pregnancy was normal. And Pixie, my daughter, was born.
I love that name.
She's
4 months old now?
She's 4.5 months old. I had her October 22nd of 2022. And she's a miracle. And she is the gift that I wanted to give Carmella for 5 years. She was literally, I joked around about she was so hard to make. Like, it took 3 years to make her, and and I joked around about like just giving her to Carmella and leaving, and like just being like, here. Like, I wanted so badly to, for Carmella to have a sibling. And of course, obviously, if we're even having this conversation, it's what we all want. And I'm so grateful I got to have that part of the story. And, will I ever try again? I don't know. I'm reeling from all the trauma. I'm re-traumatized because I'm finally able to breathe.
Do you feel a little bit like the coast is clear right now?
This is it. So
did I just step on your punchline?
No, that is exactly it. I'm doing EMDR again because when I had Pixie, I was re-triggered in a lot of ways, and I have to honor that. I didn't believe that she was healthy. I didn't believe that she was here. I wish it was magical, after like everything we'd been through. And like the birth was kind of challenging, and she went to the NICU, and then I was like, oh my God, now I'm a NICU mom. And she came out blue and wasn't breathing. And I was like, no, this isn't how it's supposed to be because of what happened before. And so I have spent 4.5 months like honoring my grief. And yes, Pixie's here. She's healthy. She's fine. I'm so grateful. But like, it took me like these 4.5 months to really accept and believe that she's here, and to chill out a little bit. I was not chill. I mean, you can imagine. I mean, like, you have your pregnancy after lost pregnancy, but then to have your baby after a stillborn, to have a baby who's alive. And I kept saying to everyone, oh, as long as she's alive, I'm not going to care at all. And that is the opposite.
Right.
She's alive, but I am so scared,
Yeah.
And so I have to honor that. Honestly, it's okay. I've been dealing with that every day.
Yeah. Well, can I tell you? So I have a son who's 7. My daughter's 13 and my son is 7. They're so far apart because of all the losses in between, but I did have him through IVF. But even to this day, he's 7 years old. Every single day, I look at him and I say, I still can't believe you're here, because I can't. I still can't believe it.
We say that to Pixie every day. Paul says it every day.
I don't think I ever will. It's just like, well, how did that even happen? How did we get so lucky after all the trauma?
That's what it feels like. Oh my God. It's just amazing. And I feel like, this is also why I feel so important that we share these stories, because like, like I can taste how hopeless I felt for so long. It is right there. It will never not be right there. I was so hopeless for so long. Like I said, it took 3 years to make Pixie, and I'm blown away and in shock that she is here. But like, I have to remember like how many people are still in that hopelessness, so many. Again, if thousands of people wrote me when I miscarried, you can only imagine how many people wrote me when Rosie died. It was actually more people than I've ever spoken to in my life, more than my career, more than a hit song. Hit song is like so small.
Right.
Losing Rosie. I was never so loved in my life, from my kindergarten teacher to every stranger on earth reached out to me, showed me and Paul love for losing our daughter. And then now to have Pixie and celebrate her life, the amount of people who have reached out and sort of in solidarity and in, saying that they had been praying for my family for 3 years, like every nun in America and in the world was praying for my family, because of my mom is like, just like so Catholic, and like literally had every nun in the world praying for us. Like I felt it. I just want to say I really, really felt it. I'm really grateful for it, and it is possible to find out what's going on. I think if anything, what I'm really advocate, but be brave and ask those questions, because it's so much easier to sometimes to just stick your head in the sand, move on, and never ask the questions because it hurts, right? We're a culture that just doesn't want to feel any pain. And it's like, no, and if I didn't feel all that pain, if I didn't go through all those things and ask those questions and find those answers, like that is, I'm able now to say that because I'm on the other end, right? It's easier for me to say that now. It certainly is not easy when you're in it, and I know that. But looking back, I'm so proud of myself for doing the work and asking the questions. And now I get to help other people. That's a privilege, like that's something I was able to do. But I have to look at like the what I've been through. Like it really, it is a gift now that I can give to other people. And I will, to honor Rosie for the rest of my life. I think that was her purpose. I don't think things happen for a reason. That was the worst thing anyone ever said to me when she died, because a reason is not the right word, but having a purpose is different for me. And I think that she was supposed to live 34 weeks to teach me that we were living in a house that was killing me, Paul, and Carmella. She saved all of our lives. We got out of that house. And then I was able to take her little life that was exactly as long as it needed to be for her, hopefully, and her purpose, and then go save millions of babies forever.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Christina, thank you so much for going there and for sharing your beautiful story and all the parts of it. I know some of that was probably hard, but I really appreciate it. I know you're helping so many women. Thank you all for listening. And just thank you to this entire community for being there for each other, for lifting each other up, for holding each other's hands. You guys are absolutely incredible. And I will talk to you next time.
Get ready, because Scott's is taking over daylight saving time. It's such a big event that we're calling it day-long saving time. And now it's got real savings. In fact, it's the biggest deals of the year. Audacious? Absolutely. So don't wait. Stock up early and you'll be able to save up to $20 on Scott's Triple Action and Easy Seed products today at the Home Depot and Lowe's. Offers available March 9th through 22nd at select U.S. stores while supplies last. Selection varies by location. See store for exact offers.